No. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. I call to order the meeting of the Manassas Park governing body for Tuesday, June 20th, 2023. Before we begin the meeting, Councilmember Amaya has requested to participate remotely. Councilmember Amaya, what is your location? Home in okay, thank you. Are there any objections to remote participation? Okay, hearing none, welcome.
Attending in person, right?
What was the question?
I want to point out that it's not a personal reason, she's doing it because she has a medical condition that keeps her from attending in person.
Okay, thank you, Dean. Next, we have approval of the agenda. I believe we have a closed agenda item. Dean, would you like to provide the citation?
Yes, it's going to be paragraphs 5 and 8 of subsection 2.2-37A of Code 6.
Any other changes or? Okay, motion to approve the agenda. So moved. Second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Please join us in a moment of silence, and Councilmember Mensing, Vice Chair Mensing, would you lead us?
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there anyone who would like to make public comment? Is there anyone signed up who would like to make public comment? Okay, I don't see anybody. I would like to mention that the Juneteenth celebration at City Hall on Friday evening was a huge success. Councilmember Moore and Councilmember Amaya were also in attendance. We sincerely thank staff who worked very hard to have it be successful. They were able to switch gears at the last moment when the weather didn't cooperate, and we had to hold it here in the governing body chambers. But it was great. Everyone had a wonderful time. And I would encourage everyone to attend next year if your schedule permits. So are there any other comments from the governing body? Anything? Okay. Moving on from public comment time. We have a public hearing, zoning ordinance text amendment 23-04. Welcome, Nikki.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council.
Oh, I'm sorry. The topic of the public hearing is a zoning ordinance text amendment. I declare the public hearing open.
Thank you. I'll just move on. You already mentioned the zoning ordinance text amendment. The main focus of this amendment is to re-examine the uses listed in this MDU district. It's the downtown mixed-use district. Determine if they're appropriate for the core area of the downtown. The core area is mentioned in the comprehensive plan and is identified as the area between Movement Avenue and the Railroad Right-of-Way with 280 feet on both sides of the house. So it really is core downtown, where we're sitting now, of course, is part of that. This proposed amendment enumerates permitted, accessory, and conditional uses in the NVTA district. I would note that if you care to ever read the zoning ordinance, it references just the B2 and the PF district, so this one will be listing and enumerating each use, so it can be very clear of what's permitted and the other uses identified. So here is some of the lists of uses that are permitted. The full list, of course, is contained in the ordinance that's attached to this agenda item. I just wanted to go over a few real quickly. Amusement centers, government structures, hospitals, hotels, indoor recreation facilities, movie theater, multifamily dwellings, and restaurants without a drive-through, parks and open space, retail as well as transportation facilities. So there's a whole variety of uses, and those are what we really want in the downtown. But I just wanted to highlight a few. So we also added accessory uses. The first bullet you see, that was always in there about just customarily incidental to one of the permitted uses. The two most important ones that are contained is the live entertainment. So this would always be ancillary or accessory, if you will, to a restaurant. But the live entertainment area cannot exceed 20% of that restaurant seating area. So we're limiting it a little bit and allowing live entertainment. Currently, this would be a conditional use permit. We didn't think that was necessary in the downtown. We want that type of vibrancy and entertainment-like feel. So that was what we proposed as a permitted accessory use. And then we did clarify that outdoor dining is also permitted accessory use when with a restaurant. Conditional uses are in the MUD are going to be the ones that require a bit of consideration, especially with traffic and potential noise. So we have arena, banquet hall. You can see live entertainment as a principal use. The nightclubs, nursery schools, private clubs, religious institutions, and satellite wagering. Just to note that satellite wagering facilities is already in there. We retain that, but these are certainly listed uses that were not in there before. Now, as part of this amendment, we did use definitions. First, we did modify two-family and multifamily dwellings. So two-family dwellings is now going to be defined as, or two separate units, but having two separate entrances and no stacking. Multifamily, to differentiate, is going to be allowed stacks of the unit, and we actually reduce the number to two. It was escalate. So that kind of fits into some of the products we have now with the 202 condos. And we also added new definitions to remove the commercial recreation facility. If you ever looked at the definition, it basically contains every type of recreational facility under the sun, and we wanted to actually kind of break those down. So what we did was identify these 4 new different kind of recreational uses. So amusement center, arena, indoor recreation facility, outdoor recreation facility. Real quick, an amusement center is a mechanical or any kind of arcade-like facility, like excuse me, I meant pinball, and even a bowling alley would qualify. So an arena is actually a 6-seat theater, if you will, having more than 2,000 seats. I would note that that is the area, the Art Center at George Mason University has about 2,000. So that is actually kind of a visual of what that limitation is. An indoor recreation facility can be a gym, an indoor swimming pool, and also any kind of sports facility that people would want to, either from a public perspective or a private perspective. Outdoor recreation facility uses golf or some kind of go-kart driving area. So those are the distinguishing factors. And just real quick, so amusement center and indoor recreation facility will be as permitted uses in the MUD. Thought that was very important to have those. And an arena would be a conditional use. And finally, there are some impacts to other zoning districts. When we did these new definitions, it did impact some of the other districts, the B2 and the PUD. So amusement centers will be permitted in the B2, as well as the Planned Unit Development District. An arena will be a conditional use in the I1 and I2. Indoor recreation facility will be a conditional use in the PUD, I1 and I2 districts. Outdoor recreation facility, only conditional use and only permitted in the I1 and I2. And then outdoor seating, which will be an accessory use to, these are all where restaurants are already permitted, but that will be in the B1, B2, B3, and B. On June 14th, the Planning Commission did recommend approval of the zoning ordinance text amendment number 23-04 as presented. And staff does recommend to the governing body approval of this amendment as proposed.
Thank you, Vicki. I continue to have concerns about the private club, and I would really like to hear the perspective of the rest of the governing body. I thought there had been some conversation earlier about the intent being genuine service groups, and I was wondering if it's possible to define private club and to include language indicating that they cannot refuse membership based on race, color, creed, disability, sexual orientation, and so on. The federal language, if that could be placed into the definition of private club. And I would love to hear what the rest of the governing body has to say about that. Yes,
I do remember us having this conversation last year.
yes, last year.
Yeah. And I think we all came to reach a consensus that we didn't want something that was discriminating anybody for any reason. And really like to stick with that.
I'm sorry.
I would really like to stick with that there's no discrimination whatsoever.
So place the language in.
It's equal out.
Can I just point something out, Mayor?
Yes.
I just want to make sure I understand, there are fraternal organizations out there that are religious-based that don't accept women, for instance. These would also be banned from having a private club in town. So I just, not that deciding one side or the other, I just want to make sure I'm aware of that.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
I agree with you.
Okay. Councilmember Jabin, comment?
No.
Is that legally possible?
Yeah, it does discriminate against protected classes under the federal government.
I had to turn your volume up. Can you say that again?
So you're just saying that we classify a private club as one that does not discriminate against individuals based on their membership in a federally protected class.
Exactly. Yeah. So that we could do that. Is that what you're saying?
We can do that. Yeah, I just want to clarify that that's what we're going to change it to.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And you also you don't have to allow these clubs downtown as well, because right now we allow these private clubs in other zoning districts in the city. This is something that you're defining your downtown. So if you want a private club, then certainly put that language in, but it will apply throughout the city, not just here.
Comments from the governing body?
I'm okay with it applying throughout the city.
I have a question. Dean, we do have a number of religious, I should say, houses of worship for different faiths here. So if we made a.
So houses of, yeah, so if they are, if they're based out of, like, say, a church or a mosque, then they wouldn't be prohibited. They could still do, still have a religious membership, and that religious membership could dictate the genders. So this wouldn't stop that. This would just stop the dedicated club that, say there was some club that, I don't know, I can't think one off the top of my head, but a club that's not affiliated with the church or a religion, and they wanted to do it, then that certainly would be allowed. I mean, it would be allowed under federal law anyway. It's, the religious exemption is one of the few exemptions, so it's kind of like the second document protection. So if it's not a religion, I don't see how they could do it anyway.
Follow up. Answer my question. Comments or questions?
What's the, I guess, the definition of a private club? Would it be just like could be a golf country club that only accepts membership? And how do you determine what membership is? I mean, how do you define a private club?
Well, I think that's what we're kind of being tasked with, because there's not a definition currently in the zoning ordinance.
I can read you the definition if you give me a second there.
Is it in the zoning ordinance as a definition?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay.
Bear with me. By a private club, it says those associations and organizations of a fraternal or social character not operated or maintained for profit. That the term shall not include nightclubs or other institutions operated as a business. So a golf club this would not include a golf club because that's operated as a business.
Thank you.
Do follow up.
Well,
There are no other governing body comments or questions. Okay, we'll move on to public comment. Would anyone care to make public comment? Okay, seeing no one and hearing no one, do we have a motion to close?
So, like before we close, are we taking more questions regarding this?
Oh,
I think
absolutely.
you were finishing about the private club, that's why.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
No, my other question was, it says no outdoor cafes. Would that include food trucks?
Where does it say no outdoor cafes? Outdoor cafes are permitted with an accessory.
It says, it says the word outdoor cafe being removed as part of the permitted use. What does that mean?
So in the permitted uses under the definition of restaurant, it was included as outdoor cafe. I think what they meant was outdoor seating, and outdoor cafe can take on various definitions. I mean, we could do a food truck an outdoor cafe, so we really wanted to limit it to outdoor seating. Now, I don't think it would preclude a food truck to come on the street, because I think that the manager makes that determination, and it's not really fall under the zoning ordinance. So, yeah, that's what the clarification was, because there is no definition outdoor cafe, and we really wanted to pinpoint it as outdoor seating.
Well, I mean, I guess my follow-up would be like, say, ice cream parlor, operating out of a trailer, occupies a parking lot, and has outdoor seating. Would that be allowed in downtown?
Not with outdoor seating. I mean, if that's something that the city wants to do in their own parking lot, that would be permitted as,
But not temporary, it will be like for permanent.
No, I mean, we would really kind of consider that as a restaurant. So we would have to comply with their own parking, and seating arrangements. But I mean, basically, if it's a little ice cream truck, I mean, that would be, a temporary use. I mean, permitted use is one that's kind of physically there all the time.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, like, there's the Haymarket, they have, I think, or something, ice cream. They're there permanent, they cover out their trailer.
Merrifield has a food truck that sells cafe, snacks and stuff like that. They're permanent. So it would be nice to have that type of vibe in our downtown, to maybe have a small staff somewhere as well. I wouldn't want to exclude that into our downtown.
I think we would have to add that as a temporary use. We currently don't allow like carnivals or festivals or as a temporary activity. So if you want those type of food vendors, or what you described as kind of like a retail restaurant, we would have to really amend that section.
No, just follow up.
No follow-up?
Well, maybe, Dean, I just ask you a question. So if you're saying that if it was like a pickle house or whatever it's called now, the game market, which is physically there, and meets its own parking requirements, and I'm sure it meets all the other zoning requirements as well, that would not be allowed or would be allowed as long as they met the parking requirements.
Right, I think that would be allowed if they could meet the parking requirements. I guess I was just kind of thinking of the layout of phase 3, not thinking there was sufficient room to do that. But yes, if they could meet it and they wanted a, semi-permanent structure, I would deem that as a restaurant under our zoning ordinance, and would be allowed, provided they could meet those parking requirements.
And then if a truck came by, that would probably be something that would be covered under the new policy we're still formulating for, say, the food market or farmers market or city events, where they register with the city and they come in under that registration from an exterior or an outside organization is kind of covering that. They come in under that umbrella permit. That would be something different. I don't know, Steve, does that cover everything you were asking?
Yeah, she touched on the points. I just want to make sure that if a business does come proposing that type of plan in our downtown, that we don't, that either we can amend it or provide a conditional use permit.
Do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Okay. Moving on to number 5, we have with us this evening our representative to the General Assembly, House of Delegates, Delegate Danica Roem, who will present a commending resolution. Welcome, Delegate Roem.
Thank you, Mayor, thanks to the council. It's great to see all y'all again, everybody here, and especially next door to our new library, which is one of the reasons that we wanted to have this here at council. And so it's the library should come forward here. I've been so impressed. I know a lot of you have been as well with how well run the new library has been, from its temporary location over at Crossing not too long ago. And when I was over there, I wanted to highlight that Manassas Park has a library. So, when a CNN reporter came down, we did a national story, and about some campaign and stuff, but I wanted to, go over there, just at least tell the local folks, hey, we have a new spot, you should go to. And then once they locate over here, ABC News Live Drive, or News Live said, hey, do you want to do an interview? Okay, let's go do it at the library. We're trying to get the word out to people that, hey, we've got this fantastic new facility. And when I'm talking to Holly about why she took the job in the first place, she had mentioned it's not all the time that she got a chance to launch a city library system, because for a lot of people at home, you may not, or you might be aware, or if you're new, you might not be aware that the Manassas Park Library has bought into the Richmond County system for a very long time. It's actually more efficient than people need to be operated on. So that's what we are. So with that, after the job they've done, I filed this here in the past House Resolution number 450, commending the staff of the Manassas Park City Library. And this was reached by Parcel Delegate on February 24th of this year. So, whereas the staff of the Manassas Park City Library successfully opened the library's permanent facility in September 2022, after the city of Manassas Park committed to establishing its first public library, which will contribute greatly to Manassas Park's residents' access to library services for years to come. And or conveniently co-located with Manassas Park City Hall and operating completely under the purview of Manassas Park. The new Manassas Park City Library offers community a new place to gather for learning, discovering, creating, and connecting, and represents a major milestone in the development of downtown Manassas Park. And whereas the staff of the Manassas Park City Library oversees the relocation process and the opening of the new library, which has meaningfully enhanced the availability of library services, programs, and cultural amenities for children, teenagers, and adults in the area. And whereas the staff of the Manassas Park City Library are committed to providing quality services to patrons, gladly offering suggestions on what to try, assisting with access to online databases, cataloging new inventory, developing educational programs, researching new reading trends, and delivering new inventory from suppliers for the benefit of the library community. And whereas the staff of the Manassas Park City Library has demonstrated exceptional creativity and vision in designing and delivering programs, events, and services that promote literacy and lifelong learning. And whereas the staff of the Manassas Park City Library has played a vital role in making the library a welcoming and inclusive space that is responsive to the needs and the interests of the community. And whereas the staff of the Manassas Park City Library can share empathy, passion, and helping patrons navigate complex issues, find resources, and improve their skills and knowledge. And whereas the staff of the Manassas Park City Library approaches a tremendous challenge of opening a new library with passion, professionalism, and their efforts have helped to make the city a more wonderful place to live, work, and play. Now, therefore, be resolved by the House of Delegates, staff of the Manassas Park City Library, be ready commended for their service to the Manassas Park community, and be resolved further that the Clerk of the House of Delegates prepare a copy of this resolution for presentation to the staff of the Manassas Park City Library as an expression of the House of Delegates' admiration for their contribution to the Commonwealth, issued by your truly signed by All MOU, President of the House of Delegates. Is the size of growth the Manassas Park Library system has had since its shift to major buildings.
Thank you so much for that. We all really appreciate it. It's been very appreciative to have this recognition. And then with the size, I mean, we grew from welcoming 800 to 900 people in our students, and here we're getting very close to 5,000 people a month in here. We used to only get less than 1,000, so we're seeing that growth every day. We used to get maybe 500 new library or 50 new library cards at Blooms, and we're at 150 new a month. So it's, we're seeing the growth, we're seeing the need. Our electronic and physical circulation, the amount of books that are going out, people are utilizing, those numbers have grown in leaps and bounds as well. So it's really been great to see and meet more and more new people in the building.
We're very proud of the growth in the collection itself. Really happy with that.
Thank you.
I'm not sure I know of any other two floor libraries in the greater Western Carolina. It's a really good point.
Thank you so much. We would be remiss if we did not thank you for all your efforts to fix Route 28 congestion. Thank you. If you have any comments on Route 28, please feel free to make them.
I'll try to do this really quick. Back in January, we secured $24.47 million from the Virginia Highway Safety Improvement Program to finally implement fully fund phase 1 of the implementation of a rough lane star study. And basically, this will run from just north of NVTA, basically where the Bloomsburg goes up to Street. And what we're going to have is the first series of innovative intersection design to called restricted crossing U-turn, or a median U-turn. So we're going to have that, a series of raised medians, so we can get rid of the so-called suicide lane. And we can also have 1.75 miles of contiguous sidewalk in order to provide an alternative to having to drive tunnels in the first place. And basically, we're hoping we're going to find out from VDOT. I did in August or September this year some more information about what's going to go on the next steps. VDOT is going to be administrating this, and so what people should probably expect is basically by the time the construction wraps up over in Centerville, right across the bridge, you should expect us to hopefully get started right over here. No one wants that to sit in 5 miles of construction traffic bringing in the crews right on down the street, or plugging that. Thank you, Mayor, for your support on the NVTA as well.
Okay, moving on. We have a YouTube comment, from Mr. Mike Smith. The live stream isn't working very well tonight. Audio quality is poor and the camera angle is off. So, I don't know that we can fix that immediately because we're having issues. Okay, thank you. Staff is shaking their head, Mr. Smith, so we can't fix it, sorry. Okay, moving on to number 6, we have, Manassas Park Active Transportation Plan. Welcome, Steve.
Hello. All right. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of council, and Steve Hall, Transportation Program Manager here with the city. I come before you tonight with Mr. Brian Lavery of Mead & Hunt, and it's a very exciting time. We're embarking and completing our first active transportation plan here for the city of Manassas Park. When I started a couple of years ago, active transportation, trails were one of the big topics of my portfolio, if you will, my work plan. There were a number of things, low-hanging fruit that certainly needed to be addressed first and looked at and carried on. However, the trails was always on the program. So I'm happy today to come before you with the results of our effort here through the Transportation and Land Use Connections Program of the Metropolitan Council of Washington Governments. The Transportation Planning Board of COG every year authorizes funding for the Transportation and Land Use Connections Program. They funded 150 projects since 2007, typically short-term consultant services that range from $30,000 to $60,000 each. The goal of which they look to promote mixed-use walkable development in communities and support a variety of alternatives such as trails and active transportation. On February 1st last year, the governing body did authorize 2 applications for the FY23 TLC program. Those were for Trails Connectivity Study and Transportation Master Plan. On April 20th of 2022, we were notified that the TPB of COG voted to approve $60,000 for an active transportation plan. Now, you may ask why not the Trails Connectivity Study. We were contacted by COG. There was interest in the Trails Connectivity Study. However, they were looking to do more of a catch-all, a larger umbrella to seek additional improvements outside of only trails. So we look at the pedestrian network, to look at bicycle improvements and things of that nature. So active transportation is a buzzword, if you will, for all things non-vehicular. It's walking, it's biking, it's trails, but non-vehicular. And so they did vote to approve $60,000 for this active transportation plan in the city. And again, this is the first such plan that we've had here. Once they voted to approve the funding, we received a list of pre-qualified COG consultants that would be interested in potentially working on such a study. We formed a city internal review team, which was comprised of myself, Calvin Odell, Director of Public Works and Community Development, and Nikki Berry, our Planning and Zoning Administrator. We reviewed and scored a handful of proposals. I want to say there was 5 of them that we had received, and we went through criteria that COG had provided. Happy to say Mead & Hunt did emerge as the top candidate. They have significant knowledge of the area. They recently did City of Manassas their transportation master plan. So they do have existing knowledge of the city and the area. On September 14th and September 30th last year, we held 2 kickoff meetings where we looked to solidify the actual scope, what it was we were intending to deliver as a result of the study. We established a Microsoft Teams so we could share information with one another. One of the the key items was to gather all the existing studies and the existing work that had been completed related to active transportation, comprehensive plan, local and surrounding jurisdictions have recently done plan updates for trails, for active transportation. We wanted to look at all of that. We wanted to look at our site plans. One of the first steps too was documenting and digitizing all of our existing assets into GIS. So that is also a deliverable of this. We knew we needed to do in-field site visits as a team, and we knew we wanted to do stakeholder outreach. We identified the deliverables, which would be, again, GIS and hard copy maps, different layers that identify bike maps, pedestrian maps, trail maps to show the existing routes, but also the proposed routes, the recommended improvements. And we will have a final report that has detailed information on each recommendation. This is where we started. I know it's kind of small, but this is where we started by digitizing all of the existing assets the city has pertaining to sidewalk, existing trails, as you can see, somewhat in green, excuse me. Pedestrian signals are identified by the pedestrians here. And this is where we started. We knew we had some crosswalks in blue. Those will be greatly expanded upon when we move forward with the Highway Safety Improvement Program project, as you all are aware of, along Manassas Drive. But this was our starting point. We took a bird's eye view of the city and said, what do we have? Where are we missing gaps? And where are there opportunities for greater connectivity? We embarked on a pretty robust stakeholder coordination effort in November and December of 2022. We formed a city team, we had questionnaires and interactive discussion in person. We held a city team meeting that included planning, parks and recreation, development services, public works, as well as economic development. We also had a public safety and a schools team. We engaged the schools, Assistant Superintendent Neff participated actively. City PD, thank you. Fire and rescue, safety, and health participated as well. Neighboring jurisdictions, we knew how important it was for us to consider what was happening next door to us. The event we wanted to connect from Manassas Park externally to Prince William, to Fairfax, to the city of Manassas. So we were able to have buy-in and participation from each of those three jurisdictions, which was great. And we also included VDOT in the neighboring jurisdictions. We felt VDOT was important here. They have a Northern Virginia district, but they also have Prince William County staff that specifically know the area, so we included VDOT here. Active transportation advocates, nonprofits, interest groups such as Active Prince William, Greater Prince William Trails Coalition. We did include some of the Trails of Blue Ways Council folks. And then we had our regional, state, and federal advocate groups. Northern Virginia Regional Commission, Department of Conservation and Recreation, National Park Service, Nova Parks, Fairfax Parks, MWCOG, obviously, and NVTA. On November 16th of last year, we did conduct a site visit of all of the city assets within Manassas Park. City representatives were present. As you can see, I was driving the UTVs safely, of course. We visited Costello Park. We visited Blooms Park. I should thank Jay Swisher. I don't think he's here tonight, but Jay did a great job with us, kind of narrating what we have, where we're at, and what some of our future plans are with some of the city assets and facilities. But we did Blooms Park and the UTVs. We did Signal Hill Park. And we also looked at other areas of connectivity. Clearly, Park Central, this is the hub. The transit-oriented development, we want this to be walkable. We want a lot of the active transportation to end up focusing here. But we also realize we need active transportation connecting everywhere around the city. We looked at Birmingham Drive. There's a clear opportunity behind Birmingham Drive as you take Birmingham Drive and it becomes a gravel road. Goes directly behind the two elementary schools the city has. But yet there's no true connection from Birmingham Drive. So we did look closely at that. And then again, the VRE parking lot in itself presents an opportunity opportunity because the Dominion power lines that run along the tracks, the PRE, there is an easement that lies there, and typically whenever there's large aerial transmission lines, there are localities that take advantage of those easements and are able to access the maintained property under the aerial line. So we did want to explore that. And then we got into developing our recommendations.
Thanks, Steve. Good evening. As Steve mentioned, my name is Brian Lowry, project manager with Need and Hunt. And the last slide that Steve showed was our field visit, and that became sort of one of the three primary sources that went into the large list of recommendations that we developed and then wrote down. The others being our stakeholder input process. Steve laid that out. And recommendations from prior documents, principally the central plan and the HSIP applications, and also the established active transportation plans with neighboring jurisdictions, where they show a piece of bicycle or pedestrian infrastructure meeting the boundary of Manassas Park. We wanted to consider whether we should have something there, which we did. We pulled a lot of recommendations from the active Prince William plan that was provided to us as well. And then we combined, so I'll jump down to the bottom actually, and we quickly realized we needed to come up with a set of categories of recommendations and not just lump them all together. We end up coming up with pedestrian, trails, and bicycle, which makes pretty obvious sense. Really the definition between pedestrian and trails, the pedestrian recommendations are generally pedestrian related, but on street, whereas the trails recommendations tend to be off street. And we also had a certain number of recommendations that were coming to the forefront, which weren't necessarily specifically pedestrian related infrastructure. Some of these HSIP recommendations that involve signals on Manassas Drive, really kind of the emblematic recommendation of that. It's a safety recommendation that's not a specific piece of pedestrian infrastructure, but it's going to provide safety to pedestrians. So we created a safety category largely for that recommendation. And then we realized that there were a handful of issues that we wanted to address through the active transportation plan that were a little bit beyond the depth and scope of a 9-month study with a $60,000 budget. And so we made a recommendation to do further study in a handful of places. And I'm going to go through a map of each of these categories and then see what was in there. So before I do jump ahead though, we combined all of our inputs into a set of desired connections. That's a good point at which to jump to this map. This is our our desired connections map based largely in part on activity centers. The three that are in purple are the activity centers that are defined by COG as regional activity centers. That being the Park Central area, really in their book 10 years ago, it wasn't called Park Central yet, called the area around the PRE station. Downtown Manassas and the Yorkshire area. Special privacy, obviously, because the money was coming from COG. But we defined several other activity centers that were obvious, such as the 28 corridor extending from Manassas Park down into Manassas. The high school here, the Liberia Avenue corridor, the corridor up by the high school and middle school as well. A lot of pedestrian and bicycle activity just associated with schools. And then so we looked at where those connections, there's desired connections, did not have infrastructure to meet them. That section was our gaps. So launching right in, I'll start with the pedestrian facilities recommendations. There are 6 of those. The dashed line one that you see, number 4 on that list, really a wayfinding recommendation, to provide wayfinding signage throughout the town, showing people what the safest pedestrian route between the various parks, Signal Hill, Costello, Blooms, what the safest route to get between those places, and also the schools. The rest of these recommendations, number one, recommends all those HSIP safety recommendations, crosswalks, filling in sidewalk gaps. There's something like 70 in that document. We originally thought, well, we'll put each one of them in there as a recommendation. And then we thought, well, that's going to be a little bit outlandish. So we just said all those recommendations are one consolidated recommendation. In addition, we got a few other. These are mostly sidewalk gaps. Number 2 and number 3 are sidewalk gaps that need to be addressed on either side of the park center. Move on to trails. Next, you can see this is more focused on the outer parts of town, particularly, refurbishing the trails at Blooms Park, a trail along the Dominion right-of-way to connect to the Bull Run Occoquan Trail. We've got another recommendation that does similar things, and you'll see throughout this. In some cases, we have different recommendations that accomplish the same thing, and that's to leave the city, options down the road. It's meant to be a living document, updated on a regular basis, and as it becomes clear which recommendation is going to be better to meet the city's needs, then one recommendation will stay and another one will go. But right now, we have, in a lot of cases, multiple recommendations that meet the same needs, such as number 8 here and this number 2, which both connect the city to the park on the other side of the Bull Run River within Fairfax County. And in some cases, we have more than one recommendation in 2 different categories. In some cases, you'll see we also have a bike recommendation going pretty much along that same location. So one option is a trail, another is bike path along the same course. And in some cases, we have one of those further study recommendations that really kind of expounds on what we're already showing. We have some other recommendations to make some shorter connections around town. I know that Luosa right away up here as well as one. That's a location where a lot of people are already using that as a trade-off, but officially they're not supposed to be. So the bike recommendations, most of the solid red lines you see here are all shared use paths off the side of the roadway. The couple that are this dark maroon red are bike lane recommendations, and this one on Manassas Drive includes a road diet, so a narrowing of the existing lanes, along with the addition of bike lanes. There's very wide lanes on here, so there's room to do that. And the dashed lines that run throughout town, those are all one recommendation again. That's just the network of shared bike roadways that would, or signed bike routes that would supplement the more fixed recommendations of either paths or bike lanes. So in this case, you'll see a bike path out to the edge of Blooms Park there. We have another recommendation to make use of the Dominion right-of-way, not just within the city, but all the way to downtown Manassas. That would be a great connection for both cities. And again, the Uosa right-of-way, we have that. In addition to as a trail recommendation, we also have a bike recommendation. These are the safety recommendations, there's only 2. Number one represents the signals recommendations that were part of that HSIP application that the city has received funds for. Or no, I'm sorry, that's number 2. Number 1 are speed They're part of the Park Central plan. You're right. There were speed warning, recommendations to slow down, vehicles approaching, the Park Central. And then finally, our further study recommendations, big giant swaths of pink. One being sort of a comprehensive long-term plan for Bloom's Park, and another, this one represents just the recommendation, the realization there are lots of places along the eastern side of the city where you could provide connection across Bull Run to the Occoquan Trail there and the other park facilities on that side. And we might not know through the limited amount of time we're able to dedicate to it where the best location is. So we're recommending a study be done just of that. And the rest of these are the same thing. We're recommending an individual small study be done to determine what the best solution is. 3 of these are locations where there aren't safe crossings. And it's sort of beyond the breadth of our study to determine what exactly the best safe crossing would be. It deserves a little bit more investigation and more work. 28, naturally. It's very difficult to cross, but in order to determine what the best crossing there, be it at grade or grade separated, and where exactly, we felt it deserves its own study. Manassas Drive from 28 to Euclid, and then also the safe crossing of the railroad in the vicinity of Manassas Drive. We did show that in the pedestrian portion to add a sidewalk there. But we're also saying it'd be better to do some sort of long-term study to determine what's the best safe crossing in that area, because there's lots of different options. And then also Euclid Avenue from the high school and middle school all the way to Liberia Ave. Right now, there's sort of a mishmash of approaches there. The city of Manassas has put bike lanes in to their border with the county. In the county, there's nothing, although their long-term plan calls for bike lanes. And in the city of Manassas Park, there's nothing in this portion. And then from Manassas Drive to roundabout the football field, the park there is a wider than normal sidewalk. And then there's an off-road path along the middle school and high school. So there's various different things along the way. And this recommendation, it basically states, it's our recommendation for the 2 cities and the county to get together and determine what the best overall approach for the whole corridor because it's a very important bike connection between Manassas and Manassas. Okay, that's just all the recommendations together in one slide. So next steps and implementation, we are very, your slide. Is that? Oh, this one's still mine. Okay. That's okay. So we are in the process of finishing up the report that will accompany these great maps that you've seen in front of you. Each recommendation will have a 1-pager summary, like you would see in a CIP plan, and they are going to have a prioritization score on a score of 10, with 7 of those points being for access and connectivity, and we'll separate them all into short, mid, and long-term recommendations. And now this is your slide.
Thank you, Brian. So some additional next steps in implementation. Obviously, we don't want the plan itself to just sit and do nothing. So we are already starting to move forward with some of these recommendations. Some of the recommendations that you did see, such as the HSIPs, some of those have already been captured, requested in grants, and funded. So that's great news. I am part of DOT's Northern Virginia District Bike and Ed Team, which is perfect timing for such a regional study to start off because we're now completing our study. So we have GIS inputs that we can offer into that greater regional study. So we're an active player there. We're looking always to identify funding sources, mainly grants. If we can fund it through grants, such as we did with the study here, the active transportation study, that's really the goal. You're well familiar with the Highway Safety Improvement Grant that was funded. We're going to start, we're looking to hire an engineer very shortly. I'm preparing an RFP that's going to go out. I'll have the engineer come on board, do the design and the construction following. That's the entire Manassas Drive corridor, crosswalks, signal backplates, ADA ramps, you name it, it's covered in there. It was about $1.2 million. I'm also in the process of preparing a transportation alternatives application. This would be for the sidewalk next to the railroad on the eastbound side. So the segment at Manassas Drive below the railroad to Digital that does not have a sidewalk now, we're working with another consultant that we got, was able to get us some pre bono design for to illustrate what that sidewalk will look like. And I'm working with Norfolk Southern as well to make sure we can address any concerns they have about crossing the railroad itself. So that funding application will go in this fall. The pre-applications are due June 30th. We were also funded, and now this is not until FY29, but congestion mitigation and air quality funds, $260,000 for trail improvements. That at the time, we kind of leaned on the comprehensive plan because we didn't yet have a trails plan per se. Now we do. So now we can use that $260,000 to implement some of this, albeit, in several years. But every year, CMAQ comes back for additional money. So we can look there. There's city capital sources. I know Blooms Park is currently identified as resurfacing in the city's capital plan, Parks and Rec. Hopefully that will move forward and we can look to resurface some of the trails that need it. There are a lot of nonprofit volunteer groups out there that are willing to devote time and energy and even some resources towards building small trail segments. There's examples around Northern Virginia. I've met a number of them at the Northern Virginia Regional Commission's Trails Conference. It was the first conference they had. I have a lot of contacts there. And then potential, developer contributions. There have been trail connections through the Elms development. The Elms development off Railroad Drive connects to Signal Hill Park. Any other opportunities that we have through rezonings potentially to add to the active transportation network, I think would be a great idea. And then we also have policy and more regulatory updates. And I think, potentially, Mickey and I have spoken about this, but considering amendments to the comprehensive plan might not be a bad idea, including this as possibly an appendix, but, other just general policy updates. It would be good at some date for City Council to officially endorse this. Obviously, this is for information only, but it's an excellent document. I couldn't be more excited. It's a lot to take on and it's a lot to implement, but I'm ready to do so. And with that, we're happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. That was an excellent presentation. Very excellent study. And I'm really glad to hear about the sidewalk from the railroad track. It's been necessary for a while. Is this designed to feed into the CIP?
Yes and no. There are projects here that I think could be requested through the CIP. Now that would have to be identified on a case-by-case basis. I think some of the improvements that were identified would probably be best served coming from transportation. Now some of them may be best served coming from Parks and Rec. We did capture the resurfacing as one of the recommendations, which does feed into the CIP. But certainly individual projects that are identified as recommendations, I personally feel could go into the CIP. I haven't discussed it with the city manager, but I believe it could inform the CIP, yes.
Financial feasibility, that's the piece. The CIP can be
monstrous, but we always scale it back because of the financial.
On slide number 10, I thought I heard that, the activity centers had a certain amount of bike and ped traffic. And I could envision bike and ped traffic in Costello Park, going to and from Costello Park. But I don't see that Costello Park is colored as an activity center.
So, I mean, the activities centers were just more so meant to be locations where there is a bunch of activity, not specifically meant to be locations, I'm loud, they can hear me. Not to be locations.
I'm sorry, I'm having problems hearing.
Okay.
The entirety of Manassas Park actually was a cotton activity center. And I guess it's all included. These activities were generally laid out to be locations where there's a lot of multimodal activity, not necessarily be locations where there already is a great deal of biking activity.
All other questions from the governing body? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I got this presentation last week with planning commission, and I asked a million questions. So I'm just going to bring up a couple points. Last week I brought up the 28 crossing that I strongly feel should not be at grade. And we spoke about it, and I would just like to see how my fellow council people think about, I know this is a big ask, not doing it now, but putting it on our radar that we need to get this moving forward, thinking about pedestrian safety crossing 28. We did have a big holiday not too long ago, close to our city, to avoid that and be proactive rather than reactive.
People do have a tendency to not cross at the intersection. I think the fatality was mid-block. I think that you folks did mention that it would have its own separate study.
Yes, so one of the items that was recommended for further study is to better identify where a crossing or crossings of Route 28 could be at grade or grade separated, obviously grade separated over or under. And the phase one that Delegate Roem mentioned, corridor improvements innovative intersection project, that is also looking at where safer crossings can be with better signage, but it's not going to be extra, it's going to look at mostly the existing intersections and how we can make those safer. But there will be a recommendation for further study, but.
Yeah, I would just like to see it. Make sure we follow it. Second, I look forward to the slides that you said we were having for the project, the CIP style slides. I'm wondering if we could bring that back in kind of a public hearing setting. I'm not sure if everyone feels about that, so we can get input from public.
I have no problem coming back.
You said that they're going to be listing out the project kind of in CIP style. And then, I would love to see this long term after that adopted.
Thank you for the presentation, very enlightening. The projects that are being recommended, are you also putting a cost estimate to them?
Yes.
You will be,
Okay, that's great. That would be included in those one-pagers.
I keep relying on my stage voice.
Good point, but TV audience.
No one's ever told me I'm not loud enough. That would be included in the report. Cost estimate, high level cost estimate at this level of effort for this plan, but a cost estimate. If I could, Mr. Moore.
This obviously is a planning level study, so again, they will be high level cost estimates. One of the other implementation strategies that really wasn't mentioned that I probably should have would be taking it a step further with design. So if we realize a funding source is available, such as transportation alternatives through VDOT, they want a concept design of what it would look like and a more concrete cost. So that is something that eventually through our ongoing professional services budget, potentially we can utilize funding to do some more design. Other pro bono design services through DDOT. I know we've had consultants help us with design for the HSIP. We had a big group ATCS help us. I currently have Volker helping me with the transportation alternative design. So design is certainly one of the most immediate steps with any grant application. So.
As far as funding, safe route to schools, especially in the Euclid corridor, we have the connecting high school, middle school. Is there any money? I've heard that safe route to school is about $1 million.
There are safe routes to school. There is safe routes to school funding. It is through, I believe it's through the revenue sharing program at DDOT now. I actually had some conversation with Superintendent, Deputy Superintendent Neff. There was a previous partnership with the city and the schools with safe routes to school. A lot of those players have since changed, and now DDOT has a new framework where it wants to see a certain action plan developed for safe routes to schools before funding is applied for. Given some of the timing constraints, we weren't able to pull it off this year, but it does come back every other year. So one of the things on my radar and my to-do list is to engage with the schools to develop these initial plans to where we can formalize our partnership and then combine forces formally to seek funding for safe routes to school in a couple of years.
And then the other follow-up question I had on funding is the President's infrastructure bill, the amounts of money at the federal level for infrastructure improvement. How would that dovetail into our plan and be shovel ready to apply for the money?
Another very good question, comment. We did recently apply for RAISE funding, Rebuilding America. The RAISE funding. We recently applied for, say, it was $10 to $12 million roughly. We applied for RAISE funding. Predominantly, that is for Park Central and the Complete Street study that was done from Euclid all the way down to, I think it's digital. And we're waiting to hear back from that. But yes, funding is available through the federal level for trails, for other infrastructure related improvements. And we're readily discussing those opportunities with our grant consultant, Virgin Provider. So RAISE would kind of be the first step in that direction. Typically, the federal opportunities carry with it planning and implementation money. So we could request planning money to help us with the design and construction money to help us with the actual construction.
Then my final question is about the Manassas on Euclid has bike lanes, I should say, near the high school. Is there any suggestion that we in Manassas Park continue that bike lane to connect with our middle school and high school?
Yes, there is. At minimum, we need to identify a more comprehensive solution where all three, city, county, two cities and the county are all on the same page because it's very disjointed along that corridor. One of the further recommendations Brian had mentioned, number 3, is the corridor from Liberia to the high school. In an ideal world, we would continue the bike lane, but really what we need to do is assess the amount of available right-of-way that we do have to see if we have the amount of paved space currently to dedicate for the on-street bike lanes. And if not, what's the next best solution? One of the identified recommendations for Manassas Drive that was mentioned would include bike lanes on Manassas Drive on the western part of the eastern part of the city, but that would require potentially reducing the right-of-way width of the road. It's called a road diet. So shrinking lanes of travel, say from 18 to 15 feet, potentially, or 15 to 12. 15 to 11 to accommodate to accommodate the bike lanes on the side of the road. Perhaps that could be done on Euclid, but we would need a little bit further study to identify.
But to be studied category.
Correct.
Bike lane.
Yes.
Well, the road diet and bike lanes on, Manassas Drive, this portion, that's just in our bike category, not as a, further study.
No, it's the bike lane on Euclid. That's for
Euclid, what we got in there is a further study, and it's not, I don't think it would need to be that intensive of a study. I think it would simply, need to be Manassas Park, Manassas, and the county sitting down together, mulling over the site. Okay, what do we as three separate entities that share this one roadway want to, what's our vision for this course? Bike lanes throughout, bike lanes up to this point, the shared use path in this section. You can have transitions from one type of facility to another. But I think in some cases I've seen around Northern Virginia, you end up where you have transition after transition after transition. And I don't think that gives you the safety condition for the cyclists if they're constantly having to switch from one thing to another. So in that corridor, it'd be good to see either the same thing throughout or maybe just one transition.
And I want to move this forward too. To your point, within the first 6 months I was here, I do have former colleagues at Prince William, and I'm very close to the folks at Manassas as well. We started doing monthly or bi-monthly or as needed meetings between our three jurisdictions. And Euclid was one of the first items we discussed, and there was funding through VDOT available to look at trails, bike paths, et cetera. And that was one that I submitted early on. Unfortunately, it didn't get funded. I wanted VDOT to fund a little, call it, small study looking at what should be the preferred alternative on Euclid Drive. Do we continue the bike lanes? What does it look like? However, they picked the project in Dumfries and they picked Hope Road. So we didn't get it funded, and I guess after that, it's kind of tapered off a bit, but it's on the radar too.
Thank you.
Let's go to our notes. Councilmember Monty, do you have any questions?
This time, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Jabez?
Yep.
Your question?
I think, what I was trying to get at was our city is basically cut in half. Right? And connecting both sides of the city should be a priority. Because this all will make sense if you're connecting one side only to one side and the other side, and just following them in your respective sides. So, I mean, I don't understand why the 28 corridor will be a priority before these other studies. Because we need to figure out 28 first before we figure out everything else. Right?
What do you mean by 20 corridor?
Like, how are you going to get the crossing over to 28 from 196? So that's
cross.
good. I mean, and if you're putting
Very expensive. That's my concern.
a study in,
Not a study, but an actual project of that magnitude would be incredibly expensive. I'm not sure we have the means of it.
I would hope that we could look for funding for that.
It's only applied for that, so.
I think we should. I think we should look for funding.
I mean, that's the whole point of connecting the city. That's the major crossing. Right? So, I mean, you can put a bike lane, but crossing with that one traffic light with traffic on both sides, that's crazy.
It's a very difficult corridor for pedestrians and bicyclists. We did identify Bloom's Quarry, where Bloom's Quarry comes out.
Right.
We did identify like crossing there. However, we do understand it's very touch and go.
Just understand, so for prioritization, it's a discussion we all have for the future study section. You guys would want to prioritize Route 28 crossing.
Yeah.
For me, I think,
Everybody's separated crossing.
I mean, there's got to be a way we could connect this basically for business, I say this, one side of the city.
Yeah, they have a whole side of the city, the kids can't play or walk to school. Because
Everyone agree with that? Does everyone agree with that?
Providing we can find the funding.
As one was saying, it's future planning as a starting point, right? And then applying for grants to try to get it done.
Right.
As long as we can apply for the grants and get some outside money, and because we can't depend on what past pedestrian crossings have cost because of inflation. I mean, we could well exceed what we think it's gonna be, so, but definitely start the planning. How does everyone?
Because you guys are providing prioritization for future actions, is that right?
In
In the study.
Yeah, each recommendation will have a prioritization score, and we're also filtering them into near, mid, and long term.
Okay. Like everybody wants to do near-term priority one, the future study.
Yeah.
Perhaps one.
Yeah, and the near, mid, and long term don't have to necessarily match up with the prioritization scores. They're just both meant to be two informative metrics as far as how to rank different recommendations in each of them.
Just one item, it was mentioned during the presentation, but we will likely the planning for this, depending on the location. You know, we have such a small segment of Manassas Park right at 28, so it will likely involve some discussions with Prince William County. Correct.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we need to sit down with everybody, figure out the plan, as they can do it easily, right? You need to have Prince William City Manassas and plus.
And that's also not to say that we're not going to do the other things, the low-hanging fruit have to take place. We need a sidewalk on Manassas Drive. And the other smaller things that need to be done. Because there's going to be millions of dollars to put overpass.
Yeah, we're still prioritizing right now the actions, the downtown in conjunction with priority of your strategic plan, number one, which is economic development. So that's still number one focus for our arborists, for our transportation, for economic development, for our events. All focus here to get this going.
And I think of how long it's taken us to have moved on our sidewalk. I mean, I can remember driving on Manassas Drive and seeing someone pushing a baby carriage, bumpity, 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 bump across the gravel.
We're moving on that. We have a sketch. It includes an ADA ramp, actually, from where the new sidewalk should be down to the parking lot. So handicap folks will not have to go all the way down Railroad. Right now, they can't get down the steps anyway. And again, the pre-application is due in a couple weeks. So, what was that grant called? Transportation alternatives.
Any other comments or questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very
We're
much.
doing it all.
That was great. And I would encourage everyone to email any more comments or questions to Laszlo. He can get it received. Moving on, consent agenda. Consent agenda consists of approval of the minutes of June 6, 2023, approval of the appointment of Sarah Barnett as FOIA officer for the city of Manassas Park, and approval of an authorization for the city manager to sign any necessary contractual documents for the purchase of JD 344P wheel loader from James River Equipment in an amount not to exceed $135,584 at the beginning of fiscal year 2024 as presented and subject to final review by city attorney.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay. Moving on to unfinished business. First, we have adoption of fiscal year 2024 tax and fee rates. The public hearing having already been held on June 6th.
Okay, I don't think I have anything to add. If you all have any questions, I have my spreadsheet in ordinance.
I just want to make a brief comment that applies to the taxes and the fees and also to the budget coming up. I want to compliment both the governing body and staff. I am very proud of the governing body and the wise and the frugal decisions that they've been making over the last couple of years. I think it's been so important. And we can all be very proud of staff because they've worked very hard to provide the governing body with sensible options that we can vote on. We all understand the corrosive nature of debt. We understand the value of reserves. And of course, we all know that we have financial responsibilities to the residents. So we still make decisions based on need and not want, but the financial position of the city is so much better now. So a great big thank you to everybody because everybody contributed to the financial stability of the city. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Laszlo or comments or anything?
I want to thank your staff for putting the budget together in this last meeting, so your staff did a great job.
Councilmember Amaya, do you have any comments?
I thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, if there's no comments or questions, staff recommendation is that the governing body approve the attached ordinance adopting the fiscal year 2024 tax and fee rates.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Adoption of fiscal year 2024 budget, the public hearing having been held on June 6th.
Yeah, just here to answer questions.
Okay. Questions? Okay. Staff recommended motion is that the governing body approve the attached ordinance adopting the fiscal year 2024 budget.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Okay. Moving on to 8C. Next we have approval of the FY24 PRTC and VRE subsidies, which we do on a yearly basis.
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to comment on is that I looked at the resolution we received from PRTC, and the numbers do align with the budget that you just voted on.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Okay. Councilmember Amaya, any questions or comments?
No comments or questions, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the motion is that the governing body adopt a resolution authorizing the appropriation of $729,026 of the city's motor fuel tax funds as presented. Yes. All in favor? Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to sale of city land. Sale of parcel 1A-2, Belmont Reserve, the public hearing having been held on June 6th.
Yeah, I made a lengthy presentation at the last meeting. I just want to reiterate, this is just for the purchase and sale agreement, and if approved, the next step would be full rezoning. That would go to the planning commission and then back to the everybody.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. No. I recall my fuzzy memory some years ago, this parcel of land, there was talk of using it for residential housing, so this is not a new concept for the city. But my question now is, what is it currently zoned as?
So the land that we own, if I'm not mistaken, is zoned as PF. Since we own it, usually government owned land is zoned as PF. The surrounding two parcels are zoned as I-1 industrial. They have a by right use right now to just develop additional industrial.
Okay. Great. And is there any barriers for us to use that land or for that land to be used for commercial retail development?
Just market viability. I just say it's too far away from the downtown core to be viable. So it's either industrial or residential. Unless we get some kind of sports activities that even have to be limited use to requires more space.
And then, if we do not sell the land, how would we go about funding the purchase of the building?
If we wanted to continue to proceed with the purchase and renovation of that building, we would just have to take that as existing funds. Let's say it was another development idea, another idea to generate additional revenues, but it would come from current tax base to pay the bill for the public.
And then, last one, what is the timeline from the sale of the land to sell land to rezoning that for us?
It's usually a few month process, once they know they have the land tied up, and it's not just our land, remember, they have to finalize the deal with the two adjacent parcels, so assuming they get all those deals wrapped up, they're gonna try to move quickly to get into zoning, but they're gonna have to work on some preliminary design engineering, they're gonna have to get, their rezoning application to the zoning administrator. Usually that's a review process that can go back and forth for a few months as well, so if it gets approved now and they lock up all the land, they do all their work in a good manner, and the quickest we would probably see this is late fall. I think more likely like a winter time, just seeing how, you know, how much back and forth there usually is for the application process for it to show up with the planning commission. But, you know, it's a simpler development as well, so maybe there's not all the moving pieces that there has been for other types of developments in the last few years. So potentially you could move it a bit quicker.
That's all I got from them. Thank you.
Okay. The motion is that the governing body approve and authorize.
Oh, I have a question. I have a question, I didn't know you were going to say this. The question is, if we sell the land and, say the deal somehow does not go through, they keep the land, or does it come back to the city?
So, Dean, correct me if I'm wrong, with the contract, it gets finalized at either rezoning or site plan approval. Is that correct?
Right. One thing is that it has to be rezoned. We just look real quick and see what the terms are here. I guess, once it's been rezoned, they can close on it. There's nothing that requires them to actually build a right way that it's really not to do. There can be holding this land that's not doing it.
That's my question, I mean, if it doesn't come to fruition, they just keep the land, and then we get paid $1,047,000. And then they just keep it in.
Yeah, so they're basically, the final subdivision has been approved. And so that's, you know, they met site plan, the family subdivision plat, it has to be approved, so once that subdivision plat approved, they have to put it, so they can make that direct. So it's gonna be a while before that happens, because the subdivision plat can be approved, we only have to for the site plan will have been developed. So timing wise, I think that goes right, it's probably gonna be winter time for you to test the students. I just given, unless they've been doing a lot of the groundwork already. As far as, you know, them defining these conditions are pretty much set out as official to the buyer. So assuming, you know, all the conditions are met, they put closing, they own the land, well, actually, by the time they do it, they will have already committed money on the site plan and then the subdivision plan. So once we go to closing, you probably, try to pull permits rather quickly.
Thank you. And then my next question is that, you mentioned that, we'll have an engineer study this building to kind of give us, their opinion on the building and what the needs are.
Yes.
Because if we decide to either renovate this or sell or tear it down and buy the warehouse behind, if the numbers are good to renovate it, I'd rather use that revenue, to keep going our taxes, keep up with departments, rather than paying for a new building.
And we're gonna look at the existing building. There's a way to renovate it at a cheaper amount, and determine that the desired governing body can go that route. So we want to present the numbers to you. See if you have the feasible plan. So that's the issue, there's land on that side too. It's a small building, there's a stream right next to it, so your development options are limited. You have to go vertical, but then all the vehicles there, it would be challenging. You wouldn't be able to fit the schools there, that's for sure. So it would purely community development department, not the schools. So you still have to then find another solution for the schools long term as well. So that would be an additional capital liability.
Quick question for clarification. By existing building, do you mean the old PD/FD that's being Room works, that's, gosh, probably about 40-some years old.
It's been terrible.
Yes, it was in terrible condition when PD was there. It was supposed to have been torn down once PD moved into their new building.
I mean, what are the conditions? I still don't know.
Have you not gone down there and looked?
I mean, it's been a while, I mean.
I would recommend you go down there and take a look. It was, I had walked in there, last time I walked in there was probably the mid-90s, and it wasn't so great then. And then I walked in again 2 years ago. There are stains from constant leaks. It's moldy, there's holes. It has outlived its purpose and then some.
Well, that's what I'm saying, I mean, are there foundation cracks? Is there, the building's probably made from steel, it's like a warehouse. So it's mostly steel and concrete probably.
When I've been there, there was cracks on the ground.
Yeah, and that's what I'm asking for, is the engineer actually give us that proposal. Right now, we're going off.
That piece was incumbent on anyway.
Right.
Regardless, either route you go, you're still gonna have to pay for whatever you decide.
Exactly, I mean, if it's like fixing a leak, I mean, it might have cost $30 million to fix a leak.
You're likely to have to demolish it. So,
Right.
It was 20 years ago, that was the plan back for that building to be demolished, because 20 years ago, that building was in such bad shape.
And do you really think that we want to be responsible if a strong storm comes, or a microburst, or a tornado, and take it, flattens that building? There could be lots of life.
I understand safety is most important, but this building has not been come up with any budget conversation in the last 5 years. You know what I'm saying?
But we know the condition that it's in.
No further questions.
Further questions? Any other comments or questions? Councilmember Amaya, do you have any questions or comments?
The question, I think, is the best solution that we have right now to be able to support our utilities and our public works staff, so I'm in favor of the grant.
Okay, the motion is that the governing body approve and authorize the city manager to sign a purchase and sale agreement for the sale of 0.65582 acres of land, more or less, legally described as parcel 1A-2, Belmont Reserve, to DR Horton Incorporated, as presented and subject to final city attorney review.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to new business. We have State Streets for All Memorandum of Understanding.
Honorable Mayor, members of council, Steve Hall again, acting Transportation Program Manager, thank you. Please bear with me. This will be a very brief item. In August of last year, the city did apply for funding through the Safe Streets for All federal grant program with the Department of Transportation. Around Thanksgiving, we were contacted by Department of Transportation staff. Prince William County was also contacted. Prince William County had also themselves submitted an individual application under the SS4A program. We were requested to combine forces with Prince William County, which we had some conversations with the city manager, with the council, and we decided we would partner, resubmitted the grant application. The grant was funded $992,000. The city match is an in-kind labor match. Initially, our application was for $280,000 with a $70,000 in-kind labor match. The application now requires a $30,000 in-kind labor match. This is for an action plan under the Safe Streets for All program. The action plan, buzzword in the transportation field now is a Vision Zero plan. So the city of Manassas Park will stand to receive a Vision Zero plan out of the greater plan. It will be something we can pull out of the entire plan, and it can stand alone on its own. Hence, we have a memorandum of understanding for your consideration tonight that outlines outlines the roles and responsibilities, as well as the fact that the city does stand to gain a Vision Zero plan from the SS40 grant. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. This is an MOU, and I think it would be helpful for the folks at home if, city attorney were to explain the difference between a memorandum of understanding and a memorandum of agreement.
Sure. So there's, and also explain the agreement. So there's basically three types of documents we enter into with other parties. An agreement is something that's very binding. It has the terms listed in it. It's a legal document that you can sue and enforce. A memorandum of agreement is usually used when there are terms that might be confidential, or there's stuff that is not wanted to be in the agreement. But the agreement, the MOA, is also enforceable. It is what it says, memorandum, or it's a written form of what Mark agrees. Okay, and it's just a little bit less formal than an actual agreement. Memorandum of understanding, however, is just the realization of what we've all kind of talked about, think is necessary to move forward by political subdivisions in Virginia. One political subdivision cannot find another to legislate expenditure of funds. And so to get around that, we do these MOQs, really non-binding. It's more of a moral commitment. And it would be an embarrassment to pull out of it. But you'll notice this here doesn't have anything in here that says the city shall do this, or if the city doesn't do this, then these. Okay, now obviously we need to do this if we want to get our plan, so there's a strong incentive to do it. But Prince William County cannot sue to enforce it. So it's more of a understanding than anything.
Thank you.
Any questions on that?
Thank you. Comments or questions? Comments or questions? No? Okay. Councilmember Amaya, comments or questions?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, the staff recommended motion is that the governing body approve and authorize the city manager to sign a memorandum of understanding with Prince William County for the purpose of providing guidance for developing separate safety action plans for the city and Prince William County as part of the joint application for the United States Department of Transportation Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program as presented and subject to final city attorney review.
So,
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you, Steve. Okay. Oh, and you're still up. Okay. 9B, endorsement and authorization of application to NVTA 6-year program.
Yes, I'm Mayor, members of council, still Steve Hall, still Transportation Manager. Delegate Roem would be glad to know that you are submitting an application for NVTA 6-year program funds. That is due on July 28th. This is a continuation of the $24+ million that we received for phase 1 of the Route 28 Innovative Intersections project. Phase 2 extends from Spruce Street to Orchard Ridge Drive. What we're planning to do is take the results of the STAR study. We do not have technical assistance. However, I will be working closely with Prince William County. The entirety of this segment of the project is in Prince William proper, so Prince William County will be requesting to administer that piece themselves. However, we have received the authorization from NVTA staff, Monica Backman, that we can apply for this funding. What we're looking for tonight is your approval of a resolution that authorizes the application as well as a funding request of up to $40 million.
Comments or questions? Comments or questions? Okay. Councilmember Amaya?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. The staff recommended motion is that the governing body approve a resolution endorsing and authorizing the city's application for the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority's fiscal year 2024, 2029 six-year program funding of the Route 28 Centerville Road corridor improvements as presented and subject to final review by city attorney. Ms. Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you very much. On to FY23 paving program.
My lucky night.
We're working tonight.
No, it's great. It's my pleasure to be here. Our mayor, members of the governing body, Steve Hall still, as you recall, we did have Food Roadware come on board last year to do our first comprehensive pavement analysis in the city. We recommended a number of roads in the FY23 paving program. Those roads were fully completed. However, there was an adjustment made on Courtney Drive that reduced the milling and overlay from 5 inches to 2 inches. There was some concern about the subbase. We felt it best to go with 2 inches as opposed to 5, so we could avoid potential issues like Scott Drive. That did result in some cost savings. Additionally, the proposal for FY23 from our paving contractor includes a liquid asphalt adjustment, which is essentially a contingency, if you will, for paving, for asphalt due to inflationary costs. So we realized some savings there. We realized some savings from unused contingency that we had requested to be approved in FY23, and then savings from Courtney Drive. So what we have done is we have looked at the remaining budget that was available in FY23, and we've looked at the budget amount that was proposed in FY24, the FY24 CIP. The total funding, if we assume the remaining FY23 funds are carried over, and the FY24 budget was approved, that funding amount would be $675,377.49. So recently, myself, Calvin Odell, and Mr. Palco met to review the Food Grove PCI scores, and we have 6 roads that do remain with PCI score of 18. The lower the score, the worse the condition. Those 6 roads are Alpine Street. These should be in your packet. Manassas Drive from Andrew Drive and Signal View to East and West Carondelet. Stephanie Street, Lambert Drive, and Price Drive and Travis Street. We did obtain quotes for those 6 streets from our paving contractor. What we found, all the roads with a PCI of 18, the total cost estimate is $587,861.01, including a 10% contingency of $58,786.10. That would be a total not to exceed $646,647.11, which would allow us, assuming the funds from FY23 are carried over, to have a sufficient balance to do all the remaining PCI 18 roads in the city. And so for your consideration, we are requesting that the remaining FY23 funds be carried over and enter and authorize the city manager to sign a task order with grants and payment.
Comments or questions?
Just for people that live on Alpine Street and Travis Street, they're having a fun time finding parking. They're, if those roads, but it's needed. And Price is the little street that's between Manassas Drive, Scott, and Forest.
Yes, that's correct.
Comments or questions? Anyone? Okay. There are no comments or questions. The motion is that the governing body approve and authorize the city manager to sign a task order with Julius Ransom Incorporated, doing business as Ransom Paving Company, to repave Alpine Street, Manassas Drive from its intersection with Andrew and Signal View Drive to its intersection with East and West Carondelet Drive, Stephanie Street, Lambert Drive, Price Drive, and Travis Street, at a cost of $587,861.01, together with a contingency of $58,786.10 for a total cost not to exceed $646,647.11 to be funded from the remaining FY23 street improve and ceiling NVTA funds and projected FY24 street improve and resealing NVTA funds pending FY24 budget adoption as presented and subject to final review by city attorney.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you.
Oh, there he is. And moving on to parental leave.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the governing body. So this has been a long time coming. This agenda and item and the next agenda item are part of the revisions to the employee handbook that Valerie, our HR manager, myself, and Dean Line have been working on since 2019-ish. We started working there. Valerie pulled up all the employee handbooks from other jurisdictions, compared them chapter by chapter. Hey, what are we missing, right? How do other jurisdictions handle different matters? Dean, of course, did a robust review legally about making sure that we're still compliant with state laws. And then things slowed down a little bit with COVID, and then we had our payroll manager of 20 years retire, and Valerie became Department 1. So her effort to keep pace with this was delayed. We finally hired a strong payroll manager that's now Valerie over the last few months to get back at this. So there's two items though that the employee handbook. It's a very lengthy document, but there's two items that would require your all's vote so that we could then finalize the employee handbook. One of them is the parental leave policy, and one of them is the employee grievance procedure, which you'll see in the next agenda item that Dean will refer. The parental leave policy, when we first started working on this draft, and I saw that the city had nothing, it just had FMLA, and that's some other jurisdictions do, but really most other jurisdictions have some kind of benefit. So I'll go over FMLA in a little bit, but so I decided at least to bring over my prior jurisdictions benefit to the new draft here, which is just 1 week paid parental leave. But the world changed in 2020, right? A lot of movements happened, a lot of change in the societal perspective, and there was a push for employers to do more for parental leave for their employees. So you can see the table that we provide. Those are the jurisdictions that responded to us in terms of what they've done with their paid parental leave. And like I did for holidays and other things, I try to match what Falls Church and Loudoun County do. They're usually very generous with their employees. And so even though we can't compete with pay, I try to at least try to match certain other benefits that don't really cost the city money. I try to align that with Loudoun County and Falls Church. And you can see that they have a 6-week paid parental leave policy. So let me go over FMLA first, because I know this is complicated for if you're not a VRS employee, or even if you're a VRS employee, it gets very complicated. There's multiple plans and it can be a little bit confusing. What happens is there's really two types of plans, right? VRS 1 and 2, right? There's different components to them, but think of them as a defined benefit plan, right? So it's just a pension plan. Think of like Social Security, right? In 2014, there was a change in law so that all new employees who became VRS employees after a certain time in 2010 were hybrid employees. Hybrid is a slightly different type of retirement program. There's a piece that's a pension program like Social Security where you get a defined benefit when you reach retirement age based off how many years of service and pay and everything. But another piece is the 401k, right? When you invest in, you set aside certain money that goes into the market, right? That those responsible for fiduciary management at the VRS, they invest the funds, and hopefully the market will grow, and then your funds grow, and then you get paid out based off the earnings of that 401k. So it's not defined benefit, it's defined contribution. You have to contribute a certain amount as you work and contribute to that. So VRS hybrid also has a short-term disability program. So just remember that VRS 1 does not, right? So when those employees, when we adopted VRS hybrid, all localities who participated in VRS at that time, 2014, had to decide, or I think it was 2015, but certainly we had to decide what we were going to do in terms of short-term disability. If we were going to participate in the state short-term disability disability program or if we were going to self-insure. And most jurisdictions decide to self-insure. That means is that if an employee goes on short-term disability, the city will cover 60% of their salary. That's different from long-term disability, right? The long-term disability, that's a separate, totally separate program. Short-term disability is when they're off a short-term leave, like FMLA, which I'll go into next, they can then get some disability payments from the jurisdiction. That's not the case with Plan 1 and Plan 2 employees, which is a big chunk of our employees, okay? So now FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act. That applies to many things, but one of the most common things that we've seen in our jurisdiction is for maternity leave. One of our employees gives birth to a child, they'll usually go out on FMLA, and that's usually about 12, the law prescribes up to 12 weeks where they can take off and we will not terminate them, right? They can be absent for those 12 weeks and then come back based on doing all the proper paperwork with the Human Resources Department. If they're VRS hybrid, then they're eligible for short-term disability, so they'll get 60% paid, right, during that time, and then they can augment that with annual leave and sick leave. For all other employees, they have to use annual leave or sick leave, right? Now, if they don't have enough annual leave or sick leave, they get nothing off of those quotas, okay? And I remind you, these are already budgeted positions, right? So we pay Joe Smith, right, a certain salary, it's already in the budget. Joe Smith takes off for 12 weeks, and he has no leave, annual or sick leave. Now we're not paying him, so we get a savings of 3 months worth of salary that we budgeted for, but we're just not spending. Does that make sense? So if we were to pay them, there would actually be no budget impact, right, by paying him, because it's already in the budget, but there would be a monetary impact. Does that make sense, the difference between the two? Okay, so with FMLA right now, we have 12 weeks of leave, and that's what we currently have as our parental leave policy, where, okay, employee, you just gave birth, you can be gone now for up to 12 weeks, either unpaid or you can utilize short-term disability, augmented with annual and sick leave, okay? But paid parental leave policy, which you can see in the chart, what other jurisdictions are doing, they're saying, well, it's not fair to require an employee to have to burn all their leave or be unpaid for that time off that they're taking to recover and be with their newborn child for those first few months. So as a benefit, we will provide a certain amount of paid time off, right? That's not charged to their annual leave or sick leave, that we provide as kind of a paid leave while they're gone. In the jurisdiction that I came from, it was 1 week at that time, right? And that was the case for a lot of other jurisdictions, but they've been growing, right? And so now Falls Church and Roem County, they provide 6 weeks. So let's say an employee now goes out, they get 6 weeks paid parental leave, and then after that, they would then either get short-term disability or have to use vacation. That's what this policy is saying. So I presented you all the different charts. I wanted to at least provide you all the data, what's happening on this soil. That's my responsibility, to show you what's happening with other jurisdictions and make sure we're remaining competitive when it comes to benefits. And so that's a table for you, but what I recommended then was kind of a 6-week policy, but also an option for those who don't want to be gone for 6 weeks, right? They need to just take off a couple weeks maybe for adoption or for maternity leave usually, right? And then come back to the office to get back to work. So if they want to go in FMLA, they can get 6 weeks paid time off and then go to utilize their annual or sick leave for the remainder of the 6 weeks. Or they can just not go on FMLA if they don't have to, because they have a child, right? And they get 2 weeks off essentially to establish whatever they need to with that new child that they have. So that's the recommendation that I came up with. Again, just mirroring Falls Church and Loudoun County. You can see that Falls Church is considering going 8 weeks. District of Columbia is already at 8 weeks. So this is spreading some other jurisdictions. When we were talking with them that don't have a paid parental leave policy, they're evaluating as well because they're seeing kind of what's happening across the country really when it comes to paid parental leave. So it was my duty to kind of bring those results back to you and Valerie. Thank you, Valerie, for all your work here the last few years and putting this all together and doing all the research for all the other jurisdictions, reaching out to all the different HR managers and learning what they provide in terms of benefits and policies and thanks Dean as well for his extensive legal review of our employee handbook. So that's what I have for tonight. I'm happy to answer questions.
Comments or questions?
So I've
dealt with FMLA as a manager, with people in maternity leave. But my FMLA expands beyond maternity leave, and this is the area that really kind of bugs me as a manager. What are we doing for those folks that fall underneath the other areas of FMLA? Are we offering them the same type of consideration? You know, folks that have, a parent that's been like an individual, that has not disability, but that's finding an illness, or a parent that has to go now and take care of a child that is sick. It seems to me if we're going to give consideration to this part of the journey in life, we need to give that same consideration, whatever that consideration is that we decide for the rest of the journey of life, as well as have some equity for all employees.
We can go back and research what other jurisdictions are doing, or if that's just a policy that you guys want to do, that's your discretion. We'll have to look at the legality as well, that as well, but I'm not ready to comment on that tonight. We didn't do the research on that. Paid parental leave just became a bigger topic in the news and for jurisdictions. That's a wonderful point, that there's other serious life-changing events.
Especially as, and I think I've seen this as I've gotten older, many of us are now in that sandwich generation where, we have our elders that are toward the end of life, and we don't have the same consideration. We have to use our comp time, we have to use our vacation time. I feel to be a good employer, it needs to be the same consideration across the board for everything that's covered underneath FMLA.
I would say I'm familiar with this policy. My employer has a 2 week, I used 2 weeks with my employer about 14 years ago, and then expanded to 8 weeks. What I support you doing is doing a new parent policy separate from this, which is 4 weeks. So they get 160 hours as long as the employee has been a full-time FTE, has been employed for 1 year, gives a general 30-day notice of possible birth, and then they use that from separate. So I'm in favor of doing 160 hours to only full-time FTEs, no part-time. The second piece, I'm going to be supportive of FMLA for others. But I know what you're doing, so I think you should really word it as a new parent policy. This was the other jurisdiction.
You want to keep it separate from it.
I want to get 4 weeks.
You get 4 weeks, and then they just enter FMLA.
60 hours. Apparently, for only full-time employees, employed for 1 year with the city, get a general 30-day notice of, or even though they're not paying for, or even taking foster, I'm absolutely here to support that. So that's what we're trying to do.
Comments or questions?
I would agree with the word, that I've thought about that before, whatever we do should be equally read.
It's probably called different policy. We have bereavement as well, right? When you lose someone, there's certain days that we provide as well, but we can look at what that call, look at the other certain ends as well.
Bereavement, all the things that ever work for bereavement within 3 days.
Yeah.
And then you use vacation time.
Well, are you referring to something? It sounded like you were referring to, you can even care for someone who's not dead yet.
Here, Stephen, Andrew.
No,
We'll
talk after.
So, with
Whatever
FMLA,
FMLA covers.
yeah, so FMLA covers, what it covers is the birth of a child or replacement of a child. The care for a child, spouse, or parent who has a serious health condition. Serious health condition that makes an employee unable to work. It also deals with reasons related to family members' service in the military, including qualified emergency leave, which is certain reasons related to family members' foreign deployment, and military caregiver leave, which I don't know, that's what I don't really quite understand, but I guess it's a family member that's been hurt in service and taking care of that individual. I guess that's what that is. But if you go to DOL, there's all these different fact sheets there, which is what I had to look at back in the day when I managed.
We certainly want time to research this as well and evaluate all the ramifications. Paid parental leave is an already established policy across other jurisdictions, so you're aware of that. I would need some time to just evaluate this and come back to you.
I think there's confusion here because this is two different things. You're talking about new people having children that jurisdictions across. They give you parent. That's what it is. It has nothing really to do with that.
Yeah, but some of them combine.
Some of them merge it within 8 weeks because they don't have enough leave in short-term disability. So it's very different. The thing is, when you have a child, I mean, a lot of, unfortunately, some of our parents are either they're in care, they don't really have that option when you're born. You can't put them away. You have to be there in person. A lot of daycare facilities, when you take a child, it's that's the reason my employer did it, they extended it to 8 weeks.
So for what you're saying is Arlington, they give you 8 weeks and then you can go on FMLA?
You can use 8 weeks for FMLA. They used to,
While you're in
they
FMLA?
used to give you just 2 weeks separate, and they added it to 8 weeks. I believe it's part of FMLA.
Part of FMLA.
It may not be, because initially it's 8 weeks. It's 8 weeks. So I
You're
gotta
saying
say,
like a hybrid, like used to be 2 weeks and then 4 weeks and then.
my understanding, I think it's not for FMLA.
Okay.
And I was confused, but
It might be separate.
it is. It was, the initial one always was separate, 2 weeks.
And I also support what Councilman Hampton is proposing. Not too awfully long ago, I was in that sandwich generation with responsibilities to parents as well as responsibilities to sick children. I can relate to that. Any other comments or questions?
No, I can relate to FMLA, that was my mother. So my question is, FMLA, is this a full-time employee can apply for FMLA?
Under this policy, we do want to apply for full-time employees only. Part-time employees can apply for FMLA after a certain amount of time. Correct? Yeah. But they wouldn't be a VRS hybrid employee.
Suggestion, I think it should be more inclusive. But at the same time, I don't want us to stop with this parental leave. We should be able to do that to research and add the other items under FMLA.
Yeah, 'cause this is a different section. So I think each of those are going to be different sections of employee handbook. So to your point, we can do this and then keep bringing those other sections that we identify and evaluate kind of pros and cons of this policy.
Because we have to stay competitive with the surrounding jurisdictions as far as our benefits. So we should move forward.
Yeah, I mean, FMLA is federally regulated. Right? They have their own guidelines, they just how we can use FMLA for. I think Councilman Guerrero is correct. I mean, you have parental leave 4 to 6 weeks, then you can enter into a 12-week FMLA program if you need more time. So that's basically 2 separate things.
Well, it can be, right? But that proposal is also a very strong proposal for employees. We just merged it because that's how, like Paul Church allowed it, right? They said, when you're on FMLA, well, those 12 weeks you're gone, we're going to pay you for 6 of those weeks for paid parental leave. The reason why you're in FMLA is for the birth of a child or adoption. That's what they said. So we just mirrored that. But you guys can say, no, we'd rather have a policy of 4 to 6 weeks off, and then you can go on FMLA.
I mean, it's longer time. The other question is, if the FMLA, say that the pay period expires, can both parents qualify for FMLA? Say the father can too, or not? In the FMLA?
Sorry, I have a follow-up question. Regarding the suggestion of Councilmember Ferrer, so how would that work? It's actually a whole semantic question. So if we went with whatever the amount of weeks that's required, so they would be required, they would take that, then they'd be required to use their space. This is how it works in my world. We don't have this FMLA. You have to, once you exhaust all of your PTO, then you go into short-term disability. I guess that's when FMLA. But in this case, they would get however amount of time we decide, right? Then do they go and then they have to use their vacation and sick leave?
It's their discretion, yeah. So the Councilman Ferrer's policy, if they would be gone for 4 weeks under a paid parental leave policy, and then if they need more time, they could then jump on FMLA, and then it would be the status quo essentially, where they could either get short-term disability and augment that with annual leave and sick leave if they qualify as a hybrid employee, or just utilize annual leave and sick leave if they don't qualify.
And then, since this is not covered, the proposal it's not really covered by FMLA. What happens if the parent decides at the end that they're not coming back, then we've given them this leave?
That they're not coming back and we gave them this leave.
Yeah, they're deciding no longer resign. We give them this leave, determine, is there some sort of agreement that they have to sign? I'm just wondering.
As it is right now, no, that's not, they don't have to sign.
Well, we don't have it in language right now. Right now, it's just straight FMLA.
Yes, that's good.
Okay.
You would want an agreement that they.
I don't know if it's legal. So I'm asking.
Yeah, I'd have to evaluate
I
that.
don't know when it will.
Yeah, I mean, what do they agree to sign?
They're just getting their salary. It's not like extra. It's just getting their salary. They're just getting their salary. It's not like we're giving them extra money. They decide to leave.
I'm just asking
No,
all the questions.
I
to
think
make
it's a
sure,
question.
yeah.
I just think if they leave it for 4 weeks, I know what you mean.
Well, I'm not sure where the majority is.
I mean, FMLA is unpaid.
It's,
Well, I mean, if it's.
if they don't have leave, it's unpaid. If you have leave and you want to utilize it, we're still paying.
This book from the staff doesn't have, they don't have enough.
Yeah, they have.
Usually about 3 or 4 weeks.
So, yeah, you're right, they'll take unpaid.
Once the company or the jurisdiction or wherever has a short-term disability program. So that's the gal that works for me, that's what she did.
And that's what we have for hybrid,
Right.
but not for plan.
Right, she's got this weird
Yeah.
mismatch of people.
I agree with Councilman Carrera. I mean, it needs to be separate. Parental leave, 4 to 6 weeks, and then FMLA. That's my opinion.
I'd like to have it the way you presented it tonight. I appreciate the research.
Are we basically fine with passing this tonight and then having, Laszlo come back with the added?
Well, the big question, so the debate right now is, do we want to stick with this policy or the new program, which is take completely separated from FMLA and just provide them paid parental leave to start, and then they can go. So right now, Councilmember Kerr and Councilmember Delegate want it separated, where you first go on 4 to 6 weeks paid parental leave and then go on FMLA. Councilmember Moore supports we're keeping them together like a false friction.
I support keeping it together and then you're coming back with more information on the added.
I support the 4 weeks, keep it separate from FMLA.
4 weeks is
Separate.
I'd like to ask Mr. Carrera, why, what made you come up with that?
Well, I used it in Orange County when I had my twins.
It's getting more time, so.
Well, initially when, both parents used to stay home, when my ex-wife worked at the city of Fairfax, they didn't have any program. So I took my 2 weeks. I stayed home with the kids for 2 weeks. She took FMLA for 3 months. She only had enough leave for about 3 weeks. She had no money. She took the short-term disability, which was down to 50% salary. It was a hardship. I then took FMLA, but I had about 3 months worth of vacation at that point, and I used it. And then we were applying for home daycare. It places a hardship on workers.
And they shouldn't use their pay, vacation pay as a way to leave. They don't.
And even if we try to use it, because.
Yeah, they use it, but they don't.
You can't get a child in a daycare for like 6 months. Some places might want for a year, and it's just very difficult.
But I can also tell you over in, not the government world, but in the private sector, you have to use your vacation time. I mean, before the FMLA kicks in, you're using your vacation time. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is that your plan would be more beneficial to the staff.
It would be to give them additional 4 weeks. They can give 4 weeks up front before they need it. And then make sure.
It's more time.
And of course, we have, we have obviously a parent out there. There's a lot of single parents out there that need the time, which is really difficult. And even those who, foster kids, it's a bonding period as well.
Okay, I can support that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we give them more time, sure.
So then 4 weeks paid parental leave, and then they can go on FMLA after.
1 year, 1 year.
Okay. modify that, I guess you can vote on that motion as well. Because this is all subject to city attorney review, so we'll modify the language to match that, have Dean review it, and then we'll go ahead and issue the employee handbook, assuming the next agenda item is also approved. We're gonna come back, yeah, so we'll re-modify as well.
All inclusive of everybody, every stage of life.
Absolutely. I think you should increase the government to the funeral census. The, bereavement leave, I think we moved that up to about, I think, 10 days for us.
So, I think the motion might still work because it says as presented. Or Dean, was the same motion still work?
Well, so it was presented, but then it was amended, so, maybe we should go ahead and say it clearly, what you're actually approving. It would be a parental leave policy that doesn't have anything to do with FMLA, just you're granting, 4 weeks of parental leave, that they just get. We can go ahead and put that in there, and then if they choose to use FMLA later, they can. They don't have to. Just before, it's like military. We give military leave. We don't require them to do anything else. They just get it. We have agreement leave, they get that. So this is a separate type of leave that's done. Maybe the motion should be something like, attorney might approve and authorize the city manager to incorporate city's employee handbook criminal leave policy that gives 4 weeks of leave to new parents. Just presented and the final city attorney.
Oh, sorry, did you ask Jessie what she thought? Did you ask Jessie what she thought? Councilmember
Jessie, do you have any comments or questions?
With Michael is suggesting, sounds like that would give more benefits to employees, so, I would agree with that.
Who made the motion?
I think Dean just did. Dean, could you repeat the motion again?
But then someone has to actually make the motion.
Well, can you?
You want to make that?
Dean, can you state the motion and then someone will move it?
Okay, the governing body approves and authorizes the city manager to incorporate into the city's employee handbook parental leave policy that gives new parents 4 weeks of leave as presented and subject to final city attorney review.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, next is new grievance procedure.
Well, fine. I have been wanting to update our grievance policy or grievance procedure for years. Currently, it's not codified. It is not easy to use. It doesn't include certain required provisions that the state has since enacted in section 15.2-1507 of the Code of Virginia. And it also has some gaping holes in some areas. So, we're currently undergoing a grievance procedure, or we did just go through a grievance procedure, and our grievance procedure we found to be woefully lacking areas. Now, in all fairness, this is the first grievance we've had in, I want to say 20 years. We don't usually get the grievance panel state. So a lot of this has to do with the grievance panel, not necessarily the grievance procedure itself. We still have various steps, 4 steps before getting to a grievance panel. Grievance panel is we had a lot of language in there about how the grievance panel is appointed, who can be on the grievance panel, how do we resolve it if you can't come up with a third panel member. Right now, what happens is the grievance, they get to select who they want to represent, or who is going to be on the panel. We get to select the other member, and then those 2 members have to select the third member. Well, we had a real problem because they just weren't in agreement. Well, that now goes to the circuit court judge, chief judge. The chief judge then gets to appoint nothing's changing in this new, grievance procedure as far as that, but we do have specifications on who can be a panel member. And then, you know, I did waive the certain requirements for the judge-appointed member. So we require that they have to be, now, this new policy requires they have to have some experience as a employee of local government. Because, you know, if someone comes in, they don't understand how local governments work, they're not going to be inclined to give a fair determination. So what I've done is I've codified it so it can be in city code, be easily accessible to any and everybody. I've also put it in a certain order that makes sense. In doing so, I looked at jurisdictions and I kind of took some of their best practices, how they handle things that we found to be somewhat problematic using our current one. And that's the result of where that's what we have in front of you now. I will point out that Jeanette found one typo that I've corrected it, and then it's on page. Well, in section 2-230, it's just a typo. I said the third line down says within 20 calendar days, and then parentheses it has the number 10, so I just changed that to 10. And I found a little typo where I needed a period instead of my colon. And so I want to go through it one more time to make sure it's absolutely cleaned up. But the meat of it is something for you right now. And I'll also point out that both Lazo and I are certified that this is in conformance with state code. That's certified that with circuit court. So there might be, you know, when I do my final review, I might have to make a change based upon that certification. I don't think so. I've gone over this numerous times. I just want to point that out. That's why I wanted to change the motion that was within the agenda just to have like final city attorney review for that purpose. But other than that, I don't really have anything to add to that. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Dean. Comments or questions?
Something like going into the court.
So it doesn't sound like.
Okay.
They have to do
I mean,
everything.
it's not, it's like a judicial body in the sense that, the court's somewhat involved, but the court, the decision is final. I mean, you know, that's why it was so important to have the selection process, very meticulously determined, because once this panel makes a decision, we're stuck. You can't appeal that decision. That's state law. So to avoid having to go to court.
Thank you. Councilmember Amaya, do you have any questions or comments?
Oh, no, it's not. Thank you.
Okay, last call for questions. Then the staff recommended motion is that the governing body adopt a new grievance procedure to be codified as Article 17 of Chapter 2 of the Code of the City of Nashville, Park, Virginia, as presented and subject to final city attorney review.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you, Dean. Okay, back to number 10. Is there anyone who would like to make public comment?
Mayor, real quick, I didn't hear you guys chime in on the, make sure you vote as well.
Did you vote, Yessie?
Yeah, hi.
I'm sorry, were you in the affirmative?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. For the record, yes. Okay. Anybody wishing to make public comment? Okay. City manager report.
A couple things, just one, to echo the mayor earlier, I want to thank staff for, the Juneteenth event went very well. We had to adjust with the rain, and they did a great job in putting that together. It was a lot of work, and it was a wonderful event. Secondly, just want to let you know, we did hire the finance operations manager, and he's here with us tonight. So Josh, you want to come forward and introduce yourself, to the governing body and give a little bit about your background.
Hey, good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Governing Body. My name is Josh McNeil, relocated from Portland, Oregon. I was the Director of Operations for the elected city auditor, there for 5 years. You're remiss if I didn't mention my wife, she's still in Portland right now, her name is Danny. We got a daughter named Delegate, they'll be here at the end of the month. Before working at the city of Portland, I was at the city of Durham, where I served in some service management roles for about 3 years. And before that, I was at the city of Chester in South Carolina and served as finance director for a couple of years. So I've been in local government my entire career. Excited about serving the community here in Manassas Park and happy to support the team. Everybody's been wonderful so far. This is my 6th day here, and just looking forward to doing some good work here.
You're welcome.
Thank you. That's all I have.
We do have closed session. Dean, would you please read us into closed session?
I recommend the governing body go into closed meeting, a prospective business, or no previous announcement has been made of actions and first locating and the attorney regarding negotiations to amend the comprehensive installment agreement with the village of Manassas Park, LLC. Item 8, respectively, of section 2, and 3.1A.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. We'll go into closed session, take a 5-minute break.